Hey, I'm Soman.
Hi, I'm Toni.
And this is a special editorial edition of EverNever TV. I'm here with Toni Marquis, my editor of the School for Good and Evil book. She edited book 2, 3, the handbook, and is editing book 4.
Yes, I am.
This is proof that our show is unscripted because we don't know what we're talking about. I always describe you as kind of like a writing therapist. I just feel like your approach is more to ask bigger questions and try to dig in and figure out what a writer is after. Have you always been that way?
Yes.
Or did that come over time?
No, I've always been that way because that's the way I was trained. I have been doing this for 43 years.
Okay, tell them who you've edited because they will be shocked.
I've edited Maurice Sendak and Shel Silverstein and Eric Carle. I edit the Chronicles of Narnia, although I never met C.S. Lewis because he died when I was born. But I learned this craft 43 years ago, and really what an editor's job was then is to be a therapist to some degree. It's to figure out what the author wants to do and how to help them do it. I almost never do line editing, which is when you go in and rewrite it the way you think it needs to be. I ask you the questions first and try and get you to go where you need to go on your own.
Like, I'm thinking of, remember in book 3, Cinderella's story, and you knew it wasn't right. I knew it wasn't right. I just don't think either of us knew what it was. And it was sort of like you asking these big questions of, you have a 700-page book, why are you dedicating an entire chapter of this in the third act? Sometimes the editor's saying, okay, I know you spent a lot of time telling this story, but it's not right.
It's not right.
And
And
so
sometimes it turns out that it doesn't belong.
Yeah, and then you just cut it.
But usually with a writer like you, and I'm not buttering you up, but there's a reason you're going there.
Right.
And we just have to get to the bottom of it. That's what my job is.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on book 4 so far, from what you know? Even though you haven't read any of it.
Which is nothing.
I know.
I obviously know what book 4 is going to end up being about. I think it's a perfect bridge between 3 and the next series that you'll do eventually based on School for Good and Evil. But, this is something interesting. We were talking about what being an artist is all about and what being an editor is all about. I wasn't overly surprised when you told me that 3 wasn't the end and that you hadn't finished telling the story.
You were also adamant that there should be a 4.
Yes.
In a way that I was never quite sure until you were sure.
Well, you left many open-ended parts. Do, in fact, Tedros and Agatha get married? I'm still not convinced they do.
Right.
I'll find out. I'm assuming they do, but who knows? You're always full of surprises. What happens to Sophie? Is she happy being on her own? What happens to the other characters? When you leave that much open, and the next series we know, and I think everybody knows it's going to be many years down the road, so you're not leaving it open for those purposes. I think you had something more to tell, and I think the natural progression, which you've talked about, is that there's now a step between being in school and moving out of the school and going into the real world. Though you're still tied to the school, it's not that many years down the road. I think that's a major step. I think it's a step kids feel very strongly about. Was like, well, I don't have the safety of the school anymore. How am I going to do it on my own? So I think there's a fabulous story there. I'm very excited. When am I going to read it?
Soon.
He always says that.
Compared to all the other books that you've edited, what do you think of the kids who read SG?
The closest that I've seen before, like them, are the fans of Narnia. You fans you really have made the series and these characters your own. They're very personal to you. You care about them. I don't think there is a greater accolade for an author than to have fans where your characters almost become their family.
Yeah, to the point
where you've made them alive.
And I feel that way too, where sometimes, I just feel like what the kids are doing with them and the fan art and their stories and everything is
it's
so
personal
good
and it's
so
good
smart.
And it's personal.
They're
wonderful. They're the best.
And it's worth all the work that the 4th is going to take because it's a lot of work. So we're going to get back to it. But thanks so much for joining us in for this conversation with Toni. And thank you for being here. We'll do this again in like 6 months when both of us are on the verge of death.
And I have white hair. Bye-bye.